We're starting just a couple of minutes here. Okay, Gauranga Nityananda. Why don't we go ahead and start? Gauragraganya Gana Gocha Goloruharam Gauranga Guritama Gopyada Kopa Briksham Gopala Gada Ratidam Yati Singha Gora Govinda Deshikavaram Satatam Namami Uttama Adama Kichuna Bachila Jachiya Dile Kakola Kahe Premananda Emona Gauranga Hridaya Dariya Bola Bhaja Gauranga Kaha Gauranga Laha Gorangira Namare Jai Jana Goranga Bhaje Se Hoyamara Pranare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Yashaiva Padambuja Bhakti Labhya, Prema Bhidana Padama Pumata, Tasmai Jagan Mangala Mangalaya, Chaitanya Chandra Namo Namaste. Chaitanya Chandra Namo Namaste. Chaitanya Chandra Namo Namaste. Madgavirapi Gopala Srikuryat Kripaya Jadi Tadaiva Sambhaya Pitva Rishayustat Priya Janaha Shri Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Sasanatana Rupaka Gopala Raghunatha Brajabala Bapahimam Vanchakalpatarubhischa Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Brinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare Shri Krishna Nama Amrita Varshi Vaktra Chandra Prabhadvasta Tamo Bodhaya Gauranga Deva Anucharaya Namo Namah Shila Narotamaya. Again and again I offer my obeisances unto Srila Narottam Das Thakur. He's indeed a true follower of Lord Gauranga Dev, the nectarian shower of the holy name of Krishna radiating from the moon of his mouth destroys the darkness of ignorance. So we're continuing with this fifth song, which is called Raganuga Bhakti Riti, or a glimpse in the path of loving attachment. We've been going through Prema-bhakti-candrika. And Narottam Das Thakur began Prema-bhakti-candrika in a very broad way, offering obeisances to Guru, and then he gives us a song, Shri Guru Charana Padma. And he speaks about the Vaishnavas and the importance of Rupa and Sanatan and different things which are negative in the path that we have to avoid. And then he begins to speak about his inner life, his inner desires. And so let's look back at the last verse that we finished. I think we had 12 sessions on or something. Yugala Charana Sevi Nirantara E Bhavi Anuragi Taki Vasudoi Sadane Bhavi Bhajaha Sudadehe Pabataha Raga Patira Se Upai. I will constantly desire to serve the lotus feet of Radha and Krishna with loving attachment. Whatever I contemplate during the practice of devotional service will certainly be achieved upon perfection in a spiritual body. This is the method on the path of attachment. So that was our last discussion. And how we spoke so much about Siddhadeha and how that arises through chanting, through our contemplation or practice of devotion. And so where does Nautam go from there? This is a verse for today. Dasani te trinadori, haha kishora kishori, charanabji nivedana kori. Brajaraja kumar sham, brishabhanu kumari nam, Shri Radhika nama manohare. Oh, he's offering some prayer. O divine youthful couple, O Shama Sundar, king of son of Braj, O Radhika, the beautiful enchanting daughter of King Vrishabhanu, taking a straw in my mouth, I pray to your lotus feet. So we've already discussed so much about Narottam Das Thakur's expressions of humility, but here we have another. And in particular, Narottam, he's offering prayers to the divine couple. And he's saying that with straw in my teeth, I'm doing this. Charanabji Nivedana Kodi. That I'm offering prayers in this way to you. We can understand from the Shikshastika prayers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, from the writings of our six Goswamis. You have a different verse in the book. What is your different verse, Lila Purushottam? Can you share that? You have to type it in.
Dhane ji dhana choy, siddha dehe taha poy, pakwa pakwa matra se bichar. That I have just after, as a text 9. After that, Yugala Charana Sevi Nirantara E Bhavi. In this one.
Yeah, right after Yugal Charana Sevi Nirantara Bhavi, then he goes on Sarana Bhavi Bejaha Suridehi Pabataha.
Yeah, then after that is Sadhane ji dhana choy, siddha dehe taha poy, pakwa pakwa matra se bichar. Pakile se prema bhakti apakve sadhana riti bhakati lakhana tattvasar.
Why don't you send me that? I'll look that up. I have two different editions that I'm working from, and both of them have this as a verse right after the previous one. So I'm going to stick with it, unless I made some mistake somehow. But anyway, this is what we have today. So Mahaprabhu in Shikshastika prayers, he says that Trinadapi Sunichena Todoriva Sahisnana Amanina Manadena, that if we want to be Kirtaniya Sudahari, if we want to always chant, then we have to practice this humility. And Narottam evokes this again and again and again, because humility is the life force of bhakti. Without humility, bhakti is like it's lifeless. It becomes mechanical. We were speaking, we have a good friend in Mayapur who's leaving her body. And she stopped eating, she stopped drinking a few days ago. She has some cancer, and it's only, the doctors are saying maybe another week she can live. How long can you live without drinking anything? And Krishna Kun's been reading with her every day. And she expressing that there's really nothing in my mind. What's in my mind? What's in my heart? She's feeling very devoid of anything. And I just suggested, and this is our situation. If we try to come in and say, "Oh, I've been chanting japa so much, I have years and years of sadhana bhakti behind me. I have the," but all of those things, my Guru said, was zero. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu implies that also. Without that humility, what is the point of it? Rather, when we find ourselves in a situation where we can't remember Krishna and devotion doesn't seem to come naturally to our heart, that's a time to cry. Some years ago, when we were traveling, I visited one temple in temples are interesting places to find verses. And I found one verse there. And I send today's text. Okay. Some years ago, we found this prayer, which I often recite. And I have for years now, I've searched for the author of this prayer without any success. I've gone online with, we have a rare book Sangha on Facebook with, last I saw, maybe a few hundred different participants. Originally, it was all pretty much Sanskrit scholars. Now it's a lot of different types of devotees. But anyway, I asked there a few times and nobody's been able to find it. But here's a prayer. It's very beautiful. It's a prayer to Srimati Radharani, and the author of the prayer, who may be a contemporary author, I suspect, but it's written very nicely, addresses himself as a pasandi. And how often is he a pasandi? He says, pasanchaham aho nityam. I'm always a pasandi. And as I've given here in the translation, the pasandi means an atheist, a heretic, a hypocrite, someone who's blasphemous, someone who's impious, or someone who's an imposter. It's a beautiful word which has so much depth of meaning. Pasanchaham aho nityam. In fact, if I think further about it, paraparada dharmaka, my dharma, my intrinsic nature is I'm always committing offenses to others. And therefore, with this spirit, I'm approaching Srimati Radharani. It's just the opposite in the material world where we hide any kind of faults that we have and we want to advertise ourselves as being a great person and so important in things. And sometimes even devotees do that. As I wrote yesterday in our little editorial for our latest magazine, that sometimes we consider that to be a kind of preaching to promote myself. The attitude, I guess, is pretty much that, well, Prabhu, we should be humble, and I don't really mean this, but if I don't promote myself, then how will anybody appreciate? Okay, that's your choice. Srila Prabhupada allowed the devotees to promote him, although he never promoted himself in that way. Anyway, with this mood, pasam jahamaho nityam paraparada dharmakaha, that my intrinsic nature is to offend everyone. I'm a pasandi, I'm a pretender, an atheist. I'm not actually a devotee at all, and I'm aho nityam. I'm always like this. Kshama shamam hare radha. Therefore, I'm approaching Srimati Radharani in this way and praying, Dehi me sadhu dharmakam. Please make me, don't bless me, but please force me, make me into a genuine sadhu. This is our prayer. So we can't separate humility from bhakti. And I have some things I'd like to speak with you about in that regard. In this verse that Nautam Das Thakur, he's praying, it was straw in my teeth. I have this, and we sometimes speak about this expression, Dante Trina, straw in my teeth, is a common expression. I'd like to share with you a few examples throughout our Gaudiya literature Rupa and Sanatana Goswami, I think I found maybe 4 different verses in Chaitanya Charitamrita where they speak about, they offer prayers with straw in their teeth. I'm just going to give one because they're more or less the same. This is in the beginning in Madhya chapter 1. Dui gucha trina dunhe dashane dharina gale vashta bandi paridanda vathana. In great humility, both brothers took bunches of straw between their teeth, and each, binding a cloth around his neck, fell down like rods before the Lord. So this is a common uh, voice of prayer throughout Gaudiya literature. Bhaktivinoda Thakur prays like this in Gita Mala. Vrindavan Das Thakur prays like this. There's many different songs and prayers. I just want to go through a few of them. This is a song from Gita Mala where Bhaktivinoda sings it. Danta Trini Dora Hoy, Kandi Yechi Ubaye, E Papi Kambita Sarir, Hey Nata Ha Nata Ha Nata Boli, Hoye Aji Kritanjali, Prasada Arpia Korostira. This sinner's body, Kandi Yechi, he's crying and crying, and Dante Trinidori Hoy, he's got straw in his teeth, and he's crying out, crying in this mood. Kampita Sharira. Sharira means the body. That a papi, this sinner is kampita, his body, his kampita Sharira, his Sharira is kampita, it's shaking. And he's calling out in this mood, hey Nata, hey Nata. And he's folding his hands. Kritanjali means folded hands. And prasada arpiya korostira. In this mood, I'm begging that you bestow upon me your kind favor. So this humility is a life of devotion, and it's a message which is repeatedly given by our acharyas over and over again. Srila Lochan Das Thakur has given this famous song, my Guru Maharaj liked very much, Akroda Paramananda Nityananda Roy. And in the 3rd stanza of that song, he mentions the same thing when he's praying to Lord Nityananda and how Lord Nityananda is a complete madman and how he's mercy personified. He prays like this. Jare deki tare kahe dante trinadori, amare kiniya laha bhaja gorahari. That whoever Lord Nityananda would meet, he would put straw in his teeth and go and beg, please, my dear brothers, do bhajan of Gorahari and purchase me, purchase me, purchase me. So this is similar too to that song which is ascribed to Narottam Das Thakur, but we've often commented it almost certainly wasn't, because we have some critical edition of all of Narottam's songs published by the University of Kolkata in Bengali. And this song, Gauranga Karuna Koro, doesn't appear there. But in that song, he prays that Dante Trinadori Gora Daki He Tomar, that with straw in my teeth, I'm coming and praying. Now, this is something I speak about quite often, so I beg apologies. Some of you heard this, but it's something, it's a very nice thing to repeat again and again. What is the purport of the straw in the teeth? As we can point out, as we often point out, if you have straw in your mouth, you can't call out. But Dante Trinadori Gori Daki He Tomar. Daki is a nice word in Bengali. Daki refers to calling out. Dak is a dak nam. Dak nam means kind of like a village name. So Daki He Tomar, I'm calling out to you. And Daki calling out means I'm calling in a very intimate, sweet way. I'm not just calling out your official name, just like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at Rath Yatra. At one point, he's addressing Jagannath as Manima, which kind of means sir. And there's also another bhav in that particular expression. But in Narottam Das Thakur, in this song ascribed to him, he's saying, Daki He Tomar, that I'm calling out to you in a very intimate way, like by your Daknam. Daknam would be like perhaps Leela Purushottam Prabhu, who gets so much respect from everybody, and everybody addresses him as Sir and Prabhu and like that. But his mother calls him Boo Boo, maybe even to this day. So that's like his Daknam. I'm sorry to reveal your secrets, Leela Purushottam Prabhu. And that Daknam is a very, very sweet name. Right? And we all have some names of affection like that, most of us with different persons. So when you have straw in your teeth, it means you can't say anything. And it has several different purports, one of which is that to this day in Orissa and West Bengal, if you do some bad thing, uh, somebody gets drunk and beats his wife or something, or their cow dies or something that they didn't take care of properly, then what they'll do is they'll put a garland sometimes of shoes around their neck and put straw in their teeth, and they'll go door to door. And because they have straw in their teeth, they can't say anything. They just knock on the door and they just stand there. And people come out and they see them and they understand this is somebody did something bad. That's their culture. And either they start rebuking them, so inauspicious to see your face, get the hell out of here, go away, or maybe they feel a little pity on them and they give them some rice or dal or something. Whatever foodstuffs they collect by the end of the day like that, that's what they eat. And they depending on how severe the offense was that they committed, they do this prayaschitta like that for a certain number of days. So that's one meaning of Dante Trinadori, with straw in my teeth. But another meaning is that what I'm going to say is not from the lips, but it's from the heart. So, in other words, here in this song by Lochan Das Thakur, Lord Nityananda, when he's preaching, he's going door to door and he's begging, Amare Kini Allah Bhaja Gaurahari, chant the names of Gauranga Mahaprabhu, and if you do that, you purchase me. But he's doing that with straw in his teeth. It means that, as we sometimes quote the famous Christian saint Francis, where he once told some of his followers that you should preach, and if necessary, use words. So, in other words, Lord Nityananda, what he's speaking is not from the lips, and maybe he's not even saying anything, but he's giving this message somehow. It's so intense, it's coming from his heart. So that's the second meaning of straw in the teeth. The third meaning is that when you have straw in your teeth, it means you're accepting your guilt. And just like a child, something is broken in the house, and the parent comes, and there's two children, and who did this? And the one child tries to evade. Well, it wasn't my fault. He pushed me, did this and that. So when you put straw in your teeth, it means there's no excuse. I'm a criminal and I'm going to accept it. And this is the mood that Narottam Das Thakur is praying in here. I just saw your message, Lila Purushottam Prabhu. Similarly, the poet Radha Mohan Das sings a beautiful song where he addresses the Vaishnavas. I'll just share this with you. Sometimes we sing this in some of our programs. Shakali Vaishnava Gosai Doya Kore More, that all the Vaishnavas are Gosai. They're my gods. And Doya Kore More, I'm praying for their mercy. And how am I praying? Dante Trinadori, with straw in my teeth. And for all these three reasons that we mentioned. Kahehe Dina Pamari. This is who I'm just a Dina Pamari. I'm a fallen person. I'm a Pamari. I'm a very wretched, nasty person. So this is the mood of Narottam Das Thakur in his song. In the previous song, he's singing about the Siddha Deha, or revealing that. And several things come to my mind and heart when I contemplate this particular stanza today, that after contemplating that thing or desiring that thing, then perhaps he feels, oh, I'm not qualified at all. I'm just a pretender. How can I go there? I can pretend in some places, even if I go to the White House, even if I'm invited to the what do you call it, the Congress or some place with so many so-called important people. I can fake it. I can do something, and most people probably do. But if you go before Radha and Krishna, if you come before Guru, you can't fake it. And therefore, some of our acharyas explain that this is the purport of Vastraharana Leela, that when we come before Guru and Krishna, we come naked. It's not a lusty pastime when Krishna steals the clothes of the gopis, but he's teaching that if you want to come before God, if you want to come before Guru and sadhus, we come naked. Doesn't mean that you're going to go before Shiva Ram Maharaj without any clothes on. I'm going to get in big trouble. But it means that we don't come with any upadis, any designations. We come just as an open book. And as my Guru Maharaj would say, your only qualification is your disqualification. So this is a mood of Narottam Das Thakur. He's crying and crying. Now, our acharyas have explained in many different places how there's a connection between humility and separation. And I'd like to share some of that with you today, in particular in regards to this song. This is, first let's start with this verse from Anchalila chapter 20, the end of Anchalila, speaking about the ecstasies of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Rasantara veshe hoila viyogaspirana udvege vishada dainye kore pralapana. That in Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, this viyog, or this separation, spurana, it awakened within him different feelings of distress, vishad. We sometimes speak about vishad yoga, moroseness, dainya, humility, and he began to speak like a crazy person. So there's a connection between humility and separation. And Narottam Das Thakur, speaking about his Siddhadeha, one reason he could be expressing his feelings after that, the previous description, is that he was thinking about that, and then but I don't have anything. And so then there's intense feelings of humility arise in him. But we know from our acharyas, Rupa Goswami, or Jiva Goswami and Bhakti Sandarbha, Priti Sandarbha, he explains that the word vipralamba means vipralamba, to attain something from a distance. It means external separation and internal union. And when the devotee is crying and crying like that, then Krishna appears within all the senses. And this is what's happening in this verse with Narottam Das Thakur. Although externally he's feeling separation, internally he's feeling union. Now let's go to Madhya Lila chapter 2, which is kind of one of the places where Srila Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami gives a preview of the Ancha Lila. And I'm just going to read an English translation as an introduction to a beautiful song which Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sang, which indicates how all of his senses perceived Krishna. All of this separation pervaded all of his senses. But my dear friends, unless I serve the transcendental form, qualities, and pastimes of Sri Krishna, all my days and all my senses will become entirely useless. Now I'm uselessly bearing the burden of my senses, which are like stone blocks and dried wood. I do not know how long I'll be able to continue without shame. And then Kaviraj Goswami describes how Mahaprabhu then begins singing this amazing song. Vanchiganamrita Dhamma Lavanamrita Janmastana Jena Deke Se Chanda Vadana Se Noyana Kiba Kaj Padake Taramundevaj Se Noyana Rahe Ki Karan. What is the use of having eyes if one doesn't see the face of Krishna, which resembles the moon and is the birthplace of all beauty and the reservoir of all nectarian songs of his flute? Let a thunderbolt strike his head. Why does he keep such eyes? So we perceive everything through our Panchagyanindriya. And therefore, we often quote this verse, Atasri Krishna Namadi Nabhavendrayam Indriya, that with our Panchagyanindriya, all that we can perceive is Panchatan Matra. We can't perceive Krishna. But the same senses, when we're feeling separation from the Lord, Krishna takes over those senses. Krishna enters into those senses through the medium of separation. So he's speaking about what is the use of the eyes, and Prabhupada gives a beautiful purport here. The moon-like face of Krishna is a reservoir of nectarine songs and the abode of his flute. It is also the root of all bodily beauty. The gopis think that if their eyes are not engaged in seeing the beautiful face of Krishna, it would be better for them to be struck by a thunderbolt. For the gopis, to see anything but Krishna is uninteresting and indeed detestable. The gopis are never pleased to see anything but Krishna. The only solace for their eyes is a beautiful moon-like face of Krishna, the worshipful object of all senses. When they cannot see the beautiful face of Krishna, they actually see everything as vacant, and they desire to be struck by a thunderbolt. They do not find any reason to maintain their eyes, and they are bereft of the beauty of Krishna. Sakhi suna mora hata bidabala, mora bapu chittaman shakala indriya gan, Krishna binu shakala bifala. My dear friends, please hear me. And this is also significant. Sakhi is calling out, Sakhi, my dear girlfriend, Suno, listen to me. Because elsewhere, Srila Rupa Goswami explains that one of the results of Vipralambha separation is that enemies become friends and friends become enemies. And the gopis express this to Krishna in the Gopi Gate. So Sakhi, hey, please listen to me, because at that moment they feel so much overwhelming separation from Krishna. Everyone becomes their friend, because when we have some poison in us, if you have some disease or something, then your body wants to vomit. Your body gets a fever because your body's wanting to get the poison out of the body. Similarly, we see if someone goes through some abuse, or they're going through a very heavy situation in their life, they need to get that poison out. It's intolerable for them. So they need to talk about it. And then by talking about it, that poison comes out. Oh, I feel better if somebody's listening to them. So that means a friend. Saki he suno mora hata bidibala. Please listen, I don't have any strength without Krishna. My body, my senses, everything is all useless. Krishnara Madhura Vani Amritera Tarangini Tara Prabhishahi Jeshravane Kanakari Chidrasam Janiha Seshravana Tara Janma Hoila Akarani. By the way, this verse here was spoken by my Guru Maharaj once, and he spoke something about it, and we printed a book called Amrita Tarangini, The Flow of Nectar, based on this verse. Topics about Krishna are like waves of nectar. If such nectar does not enter one's ear, the ear is no better than the hole of a damaged conch shell. Such an ear is created for no purpose. And then Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada notes in his purport, he quotes a long string of verses from the second canto of the Bhagavatam, which speak about the same thing. First is a very famous verse, Ayurhadati Vaipum Samudjanastam Yachanyana. So that by the rising and setting of the sun, the rising and setting of the sun decreases the duration of life of everyone. And then he speaks about the different senses. What's the use of breathing? What's the use of seeing if we haven't seen Krishna? What's the use of talking if we can't speak about Krishna? So Mahaprabhu is in the mood of the gopis, and this is Krishna's purpose in coming as Mahaprabhu. He wants to taste their feelings. And in Jagannath, in Mayapur, and Navadvip, and even in Vrindavan, he wasn't able to do that. He wasn't able to satisfy his desire to fully taste the mood of the gopis, because their mood was a mood of separation. In Vrindavan Dham, it is Madhurya Mohi Dham, it's a place of sambhog, of union. And he can't taste Radharani's feelings of separation there, because when he goes there, he's Krishna. And if he starts crying for himself, as we see in the pastime at Imli Tal, Mahaprabhu goes there, and in the mood of Radharani, he starts crying Krishna, Krishna. And Radharani's mood is so intense that Krishna appears. He's Krishna. And so all of a sudden his Shama Sundar, excuse me, his Gaura Sundar, golden color, transforms into Shama Sundar. He becomes Krishna. And then he thinks, I can't stay here. I have to go to a chamber of Vrindavan because it's only in Vrindavan that I can taste the mood of Radha, but it has to be a chamber of separation. And I spoke something about that. I'm going to post a lecture hopefully in a day or two. It was the last lecture I spoke about separation in New Brajadam, maybe the last two lectures, but I haven't posted. But I would, some very esoteric things came to our mind in that lecture. If anybody likes to hear about separation, in particular separation from Guru and the Vaishnavas and the purport of that in connection with Lord Balaram and Jagannath Puri, we spoke some things about that. So I'll post it later on. So Prabhupada translates this: the nectar from the lips of Lord Krishna and his transcendental qualities and characteristics surpass the taste of the essence of all nectar, and there's no fault in tasting such nectar. If one doesn't taste it, he should die immediately after birth, and his tongue is to be considered no better than the tongue of a frog. So we were mentioning that with our Pancha-gyan Indriya, our knowledge-acquiring senses, we perceive Panchatan Matra. We perceive this material world. In the language of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, these senses are the things which bind us to this world. We see everything in terms of the object of our senses. We perceive happiness as being sensual enjoyment. But now just the opposite has happened in separation. The gopis and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they're experiencing Krishna directly, internally, through these senses. And so then in these prayers, he goes on to speak about how the nose is useless unless they smell Krishna's body, the palms and parts of the skin is useless unless they can touch Krishna's skin. And then Kaviraj Goswami concludes this description by stating, Kori eta vilapana prabhu shachi nandana udagiya udgadiya hridaya shoka danya nivedan vishade hridayara avasade punarapi pade eka shloka. Lamenting in this way, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu opened the doors of grief within his heart. Morose, humble, and disappointed, he recited a verse again and again with a despondent heart. And then he begins to speak about the Sikshastakam prayers and how he was speaking so much humility and separation from the Lord. In his purport, Srila Prabhupada gives a very interesting thing, which is something which we mentioned in a previous session. I'm just going to read this highlighted part in particular. In the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the word dainya, humility, is explained as follows, quote, when unhappiness, fearfulness, and the sense of having offended combine, one feels condemned. The sense of condemnation is described as dinata, or humility. So this is a verse from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu of Srila Rupa Goswami. It's second wave in the fourth chapter, and he says that dukkha trasa parada jaya narjitam dadinata, that when there's dukkha, some unhappiness, trasa, the sense that we're fearful, and aparada jaya, the sense that I've committed some offense, then this brings forward humility. And these are feelings which take place in separation. With the gopis, with great devotees, they feel like, well, what have I done? In Leela Purushottam Prabhu's house, we were discussing a story which we'd been translating. I think well, actually, we did it in Puri also, but outside of Puri, it's the only time we ever did that story, Leela, if you remember it. At one point, Srimati Radharani, she's feeling separation from Krishna, and she sees a cloud, and she becomes ecstatic. Oh, Ganesham, Krishna's here. He sees my separation, so he's come to me. And she starts talking in her unmadan and her madness. She starts speaking to the cloud. And then all of a sudden, the cloud starts going away because that's what clouds do when the wind blows. And then Srimati Radharani, in her madness, she thinks, oh, I've offended Krishna. Krishna's leaving. And she experiences this dukkha trasa paradaya. She experiences humility through these three causes. She feels condemned. She feels that I'm so sorry Krishna's leaving now. She feels afraid. Maybe I've committed some offense or something. So this is Vipralambha. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in Sarita Darshani, he explains also that this is the meaning of the word viraha. Sambhog means union, and bhoga, of course, means enjoyment. Sambhog means union, enjoyment, and the word viraha means separation. And he explains that viraha means the syllable v and raha are two. It's a compound word, two syllables together. V means vishesha rupa, a special form of raha. And what is raha? Vishwanath explains raha means rahasya milan. Rahasya means something very mysterious. So the word raha means mysterious. Rahasya milan, a mysterious union. So viraha, V means vishesha rupa, special form of rahasya milan, raha, mysterious union. It means external separation, but internal union. And the result of this, again, is humility. And there's a beautiful description about Mother Yashoda in Prabhupada's Nectar Devotion. In separation from Krishna, Mother Yashoda was looking at Krishna's makeup utensils, and she fell down on the ground almost unconscious with a great sound. When she was rolling over on the ground, there were many scratches on her body, and in that piteous condition, she began to cry, "Oh, my dear son, my dear son." And she slapped her breast with her two hands. This activity of Mother Yashoda is explained by expert devotees as ecstatic love and separation. Sometimes there are many other symptoms, such as great anxiety, lamentation, frustration, being stunned, humility, restlessness, madness, and illusion. And so this is what Narottam Das Thakur is expressing here. Now, there's another aspect, too, that he's expressing here, too, which is that he's having a vision. In this discussion, he's got straw in his teeth. I'm such a fallen rascal. But then he begins speaking about the form of Radha and Krishna. And let's see. Brajajana Kumar Sham, that my dear Krishna, you're Kumar Sham, you're blackish, you're Kumar, you have this beautiful young age, you're Brajaraj, you're the king of Braj. Brishabhanu Kumari Nam. And my dear Radharani, you're Brishabhanu Kumari, you're the daughter, the beautiful young girl, the daughter of Maharaj Brishabhanu, Shri Radhika Nama Manohari. And so your name alone is so Manohari, so very, very enchanting. Or you yourself are very, very enchanting. So Narottam Das Thakur is showing this. He's speaking about Siddhadeha, and then and he's feeling separation. And then in that separation, he's having a vision. He's seeing Radha and Krishna, and he begins to describe them. But the nature of devotees is that they don't want to imitate this. We just made this last issue of the Bindu, which is a subject. Some of the topics from that issue we'll be speaking about in Czech, but along with some other things too. I think we'll just see how that goes. But the topic being that we should hide our bhajan, we should hide our feelings, because otherwise the tendency is to try to imitate. And there's many, many descriptions of that. We put a few stories in that magazine of persons who try to imitate something else. I'd like to tell you a story from the Mahabharata in this regard, because the Mahabharata is like Leela Purushottam Prabhu's favorite book. And he really appreciates it so much. What is this? Why is the verse mixing the ages, Kishore, Kishore, and then Kumar, Kumari? That's an interesting point. Maybe he's going from one point to the next. He's saying, and I also find it interesting too that Srila Prabhupada, when he went to Chicago, he named the beautiful deities there Kishore, Kishore. And they are really, really extraordinarily beautiful. Still there. I found that a very beautiful name. Anyway, I want to tell the story from Leela Purushottam Prabhu's favorite book. He likes about stories about fighting and dharma and ethics and all that from Mahabharata. So this is from the Karna Parva, when Karna becomes the chief of the army of the Kauravas. And at that time, it's a long story behind it, but there was one devotee, his name was Salya, and Salya was on the side of the Pandavas, actually. He appreciated them. But he made a he was going to bringing his army to go to the Pandavas, and as he was traveling, it was very hot, and they were tired, and the army was very thirsty. And Karna made arrangements on the way for them to have water and food and things. And Salya was so appreciative. He said, "Well, whoever did this, I'm going to dedicate myself to them." And then Karna showed up and said, "Actually, it was me." And you made a promise and you're going to dedicate yourself, so you have to fight on my side. And Salya was one of the Maharathis, one of the great warriors in the Mahabharata. So he became the Sarathi, or the chariot driver for Karna. But he also promised, he went to Yudhishthira after this thing happened with him and Karna. And he went to Yudhishthira and said, "I'm so sorry. I wanted to fight on your behalf, but I made this mistake. I made this promise, and then I can't break my word." And Yudhishthira told him, "Anyway, you just remember us and you help us when you can at the right moment." So when Karna became the chief general of the army, Salya became his chariot driver. And he started preaching to Karna. And he told Karna a wonderful story about a wealthy Vaishya who was living by the ocean, who was doing many different sacrifices. He was very generous and very pure and things. And he had a number of sons. And his sons were also very pious. And they were kind to all living entities. They'd like to feed the animals and that. And there was one crow who was coming to the house every day of that Vaishya. And his children were giving him like rasgullas and ice cream and yogurt and honey and butter and different things. And that crow was having a good life. He was enjoying all those things very much. After some time of eating like that, that crow became very arrogant and started thinking, "I'm better than all the other birds." And then one day, some Rajahamsa swans came. And these Rajahamsa swans, their wingspan is like 6 feet or something. And they're huge birds. And these birds were so elegant and so regal. They were practically equal to Garuda. And they came by the shore of the ocean. And when the sons of the Vaishyas saw that, they started making a joke with that crow. And they said, "Oh, my dear crow, you're better than these big birds." And that crow, he considered those words to be true. Just like sometimes Orsi, she comes and says, "Oh, you are so great. You're like this and that." Sometimes devotees, they say things and we might think, "Oh, yes, just see. Orsi said that. Orsi's a PhD, so it must be true. I must be a great personality if somebody's saying like that." And so that crow became proud. And then seeing all the other birds around who were in awe of those two swans, that crow went and in front of all the other birds, he challenged them. He said, "You are just showing up here. You're just some puffed up, impudent rascals. I'm Pucky Raj. I'm the king of birds around here, not you guys. Let's have a competition of flying." And when those Rajahangsa swans heard the words of that crow, they just started laughing. And they said, "We're just swans. We live in Manasa Lake. We fly all over the place. How, how are you going to compete with us?" And that crow said, "No, no, I'm Pucky Raj. I'm a very, very powerful crow." And then he started flying in so many different ways. He was flying straight up and then straight down, and he's flying upside down. And all the other crows began to glorify him. "Ka, ka, ka, ka. Our brother is so great." In a Odia language, the word for crow is kaka. because that's the sound they make, ka, ka. So he was flying in all these different ways, and, and these two Rajahangsa swans were looking at each other like, these guys are completely crazy. Let's get out of here. Because that's the way a high-class person behaves. If they see some crazy person wanting to debate with them or fight with them or something, they just bow their head and they leave. And so the crow saw the swans flying away. And then the crow became a little angry. Hey, what are you trying to do? You're trying to get away. You're trying to escape it. You can't escape me. So the crow started flying after them. And then the swans started flying out over the ocean. Now, those swans, they could fly for, I don't know, at one time, maybe 300 or 400 kilometers or more at one point. The crow can fly maybe 1 kilometer at a time or something. And they started flying out over the ocean, and the crow started feeling nervous. He thought, I've never flown this far out over the water before, and now I can't see the land. And what's going on? And I'm starting to get tired, and there's all these terrible monsters in the oceans. And what's going to happen to me? And that crow started flying lower and lower. He didn't have strength. And finally, he started hitting the water. And then he began to panic that oh, I'm going to get eaten alive. And he started crying out, please help me, please help me, please take me back to the land. So then one of the swans went down and picked him up, put him on his back, and brought him back to the shore. And he said, why you were bragging to us that you're such a big person and this and that, and now you become tired. And that crow began to plead with him, said, please forgive me. I was eating this opulent food, and I thought that I was such a big person, but now I'm taking shelter of you. You please help me. And so the swan picked up the crow and put him on his back and flew him back to the land. That crow was all completely soaking wet and trembling in fear and cold. It was nearly dead. And then the swan put him back down the ground and comforted him and then flew away. And then Salya at that point, remember Salya was telling the story to Karna. So he said, so Karna, just like that crow, was eating the remnants of the Vaishya children and became proud and disrespected his equals and superiors. So in the same way, you've been living on the remnants of Dhritarashtra's sons, and now you became proud. You think you're fit to fight with Krishna and Arjuna. So this is the nature. Sometimes we get some mercy of some great personalities. Even though we're kakajanas, we're crow-like persons, we become proud and we forget the color of our feathers. And we get, by little association with some Paramahamsa devotees who are swan-like persons, we start thinking, yes, I'm something very, very special. I'm superior to everybody else. And maybe even I'm the equal of those Paramahamsas. And then instead of doing anusar, following the instructions of the Lord's devotees, we take up anukar. Anusar means to follow the sar, the essence of things. Anukar means to imitate. Bhaktivinoda Thakur sings about this in one song. He says that Garita achare rohi lama moji nakorinu sadhu sangam loy sadhu besha ani upadeshe eboro mayara ranga. He says, but actually, if I tell the truth, my achar, my behavior is garita. It's very, very bad. Nakorino sadhu sangha. I never really ever did sadhu sangha. I was just, there's a few photographs taken with my Guru Maharaj that I got to be in, and I post those on Facebook to show that I'm so close with my Guru Dev. But actually, I never really did sadhu sangha because I didn't really hear from my Guru Dev. I didn't really follow what he said. And now here I am, loy sadhu vesh, ani upadesh. Here I am on Zoom, giving, dressed like a sadhu, ani upadeshi, giving instructions to everybody. He says, Ebodo Maya Ranga. This is Maya's big joke. So this is such a very, very important principle that Narottam Das Thakur is indirectly indicating to us too. It's not that we should imitate and be anukor, but we have to be anusar. And we just humbly bow our head and go on, and these things will come automatically. We don't have to try to imitate it. There's another story that I heard some years ago in Vrindavan, which is a fairly contemporary story. Maybe it took place like, I don't know, 50 years ago or something. There was one sadhu who was a very famous Bhagavat pracharak or speaker of the Bhagavatam living in Vrindavan. And many, many Brijbasis and sadhus would come every day to hear him speak. And there was one strange fellow who was coming to the talks also. And that fellow hadn't bathed. Nobody knew when he had bathed. His body was covered with dirt, and his hair was matted, and he had a strong odor about him. And he was a strange fellow. And those Brijbasis are very, very particular. They're very, very neat. Although we go with our Western perception and we see everything as being dirty, they're so much cleaner than ourselves. They don't drink with their mouth to a cup. They pour it in their mouth. And there's so many different ways. They're much, much cleaner than us. So when this crazy fellow would come into the assembly, the people would get up and move away from him. And one day someone saw him sitting on the ground with a group of dogs, and someone had given him some food or some prasadam, and he was eating it, and the dogs, a group of dogs, were eating off of his plate at the same time as him. And they're just, oh my God, this guy is really bad. And that pracharak, that famous speaker, never spoke with him, actually. And one day, he had gone to the temple of Gopishwar Mahadev near to Vamsivat, not so far from the Govindaji temple in Brahmakund. And he went there to have darshan to Gopishwar. As he was going inside the temple, he saw that strange fellow was coming out. And somehow that pracharak, that preacher, felt inspired to inquire from him. He said, hey, man, you know, I never spoke with you. He said, you know, what's going on with you? Why do you live on the street and things? He said, what is your gotra? What is your family? And he said, oh, I come from a Sarasvat gotra. Now, amongst different Brahmin families, Sarasvat is like the gold standard. That's the gold medal in the Olympics. That Sarasvat family means like the highest kind of Brahmin family. And that pracharak was a little surprised. And so then he asked the person, he said, well, do you have any education? And he said, well, yeah, I have a master's degree in engineering. Oh my God, man, you know, what the hell are you doing? You're eating on the ground with dogs, you're not taking baths. What are you doing? And then by Krishna's desire, that strange fellow said something which perhaps he normally wouldn't say, but Krishna inspired him in the heart. And he said, well, he said, if I don't behave like this, I can't see Krishna. And that pracharak, who was a very learned person in Goswami literatures, as well as the Bhagavatam, became very curious. He said, you see Krishna? Yes, I see Krishna. How do you see Krishna? Is it like a spurti? Do you see him for one moment, just like Narad Muni in his previous life as a son of a maidservant? He heard Krishna's voice. He saw Krishna for one moment, and Krishna disappeared. He said, how do you see Krishna? He said, no, I see Krishna like I see you. And I talk with him. And he said, but if I don't behave like this, then I can't see Krishna. So I'm telling these stories, this story, this last one, and this story about the flight of the crow, which is something we printed in our Bindu magazine some years ago from Leela Purushottam Prabhu's favorite book, Mahabharat, to illustrate this point about Narottam Das Thakur's mood that we can't imitate. And we feel some pain when we walk into such an assembly of great saintly persons. We walk into the assembly of Radha and Krishna. When we see them, then we feel like, what am I? Garhita Achari, Rohi Lama Moji, Nakorino Sadhu, Loi Sadhu Vesh, Ani Upadesh. I'm just Loi Sadhu. I'm dressing up like a devotee, but I'm not really a devotee. Pasam Jahamaho Nityam, this prayer to Srimati Radharani. I'm actually a Pasandi. I'm just a pretender. I don't really have anything. And it's that prayer, that mood of dainya, which is the life of bhakti. And in that mood, then Narottam Das Thakur has this vision. He sees Radha and Krishna. It's in that mood of humility that Krishna, coming as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he has darshan of himself. He perceives Krishna through his various different senses in that mood of humility. So Narottam Das Thakur is opening up his heart and revealing these things to us, and thereby also teaching us. So I'm going to go ahead and stop here. If anybody has any reflections or comments or anything, this would be the time. It's nice to have Mangal Prabhu here. And Bonnie, I'm really happy you're still here with us too. It's hard for you, I think, sometimes you're there in Vermont and you're traveling here and there. We miss your association. So if anybody has any reflections or comments, questions, you can go ahead. Tirthakar Prabhu, you share something.
Maravana Prabhu, thank you very much for so many insights about humility. I just put it in a chat. I received it a few days back from one Vaishnavi from our Sangha that we have. I was thinking maybe if we can read it and give some comments.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. This is the other side of the coin. We should not be humble when interacting with rascals, false pretenders, crooked and cunning cheaters, demons, no matter how they are dressed, what so-called position they have, as who they are assuming or presenting themselves to be. The Mahajanas, great spiritual authorities, have advised, give me a second, have advised that one's humility should not be made evident in front of anyone and everyone. To express one's humility in front of an atheist who is envious of Sri Guru and the Vaishnavas, in front of a demoniac person like Ravan, or in front of a pretentious Brahman is not Vaishnav Seva, nor is it Trinadapi Sunichena. If a person does so, he can never attain the ability to perform kirtan, nor can he develop taste for chanting the holy names. In fact, such a misplaced display of humility is an act of violence toward other living entities. What a wonderful quote, Tirthakar Prabhu. Thank you so much for sharing that. What came to my mind initially, too, is my Guru Maharaj. That Guru Maharaj, when he was interacting with rascals, false pretenders, crooked and cunning cheaters, demons like myself, and some others, he would chastise us. He didn't exhibit his humility. He demanded respect, and he sometimes physically would slap us and chastise us very, very heavily. But that's real humility. It's not the false humility we have in this world where we're trying to win votes from someone. We're trying to impress someone, get someone to like us, or trying to cheat someone out of money or get him to purchase something from it. But it's real humility in the sense that such a person is so elevated, they're acting on behalf of Krishna. Now, we should be careful. Srila Prabhupada once was asked by one of his lady disciples, it might have been Rukmini, I don't know, she was a very early disciple, that Swamiji, she said, how can we go, we're supposed to be humble and chaste and meek, but how do we preach then? And Prabhupada told her that you're humble, chaste, and meek here, but when you go out, then you should roar like a lion. And that's real humility. It's real humility to preach, to carry on the mission of our Gurudev. That's real humility. Not that, oh, Prabhu, I'm so fallen, I can't, what can I do? I can't. No, real humility means you suck it up. You repeat what you've heard from your Guru, and you do that for him. Anything else, is Srila Bhaktisiddhanta saying here, is a misplaced display of humility. It's just a show of humility, and which is actually an act of violence toward other living entities. Someone wrote to me after we sent out this last Bindu, and they let me go ahead and read the comment they wrote. It's a devotee here in Hungary. I'm not going to say their name. I don't think, or she probably knows him. He's not a very well-known person. Ogonitai. Here it is. He said that, how do I hide my bhakti? I understand that true elevated souls hide their ecstatic symptoms, but I could never do that properly. Whenever I happen to become a little more sattvic in my general state of mind in my life, then I can't help myself to cry out of joy or separation if I concentrate on the Maha Mantra, the divine form of the Lord. So how can I keep that a secret? If I try singing without tears, I feel like a robot. If I concentrate, I'm crying like anything. After the kirtan sung is over, I again feel attraction to material things rather than the holy name. Nowadays, the reason of me crying is mostly because I don't feel a pinch of attachment in my heart for the whole process of bhakti. This situation saddens me. So my first comment to him was, don't cry in public. Cry in your room in private. We should learn to, as the theme of this last magazine was, that love's candle burns brightest in the dark. When we keep those feelings hidden away before other people, then that burns very bright. But when we open the doors and the windows to show everybody how bright our candle of love is, then the wind comes in and it blows it out. So that's my thought there. Yeah, very good analogy to Leela Purushottam was commenting. And his mind goes to the story of Rupa Goswami signing the paper to the Digvijay Pandit and later chastising Jiva Goswami for protecting his dignity. So both of them were humble. Both of them acted in a proper way. Jiva Goswami challenged that Digvijay Pandit. How can you say you're greater than my uncles Rupa and Sanatan? No, you debate with me. And that was, in one sense, a great show of pride, but actually it was real humility because it wasn't for himself. And Rupa and Sanatan, they chastised Jiva, although they actually loved Jiva. That Rupa in particular chastised him, Sanatan in particular, is that right? Chastised him.
But Rupa and Sanatan protected him.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. Yeah, you should be kind to Jivas, Sanatan told Rupa later on.
Jiva.
They were also showing proper humility. So that humility is something also that we should teach others. But just like there's a story we didn't put in a recent Bindu, Prabhupada was walking around Stowe Lake in San Francisco Golden Gate Park one morning, and one of the young devotees ran up beside Prabhupada, and he wanted to hear something special. So he asked Srila Prabhupada, he said, you must be feeling so much separation from your spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. And Srila Prabhupada stopped, and he turned to him in a rather harsh voice. He said, that is not for you to understand. And Prabhupada kept walking. So although Srila Prabhupada would bow his head and offer obeisances to the disciples and teach us in that way, but he also had his private life, and he taught through that. So I see a lot of times in ISKCON, in fact, our old friend Vipramukhya, former Swami, he used to make jokes about it. Sometimes I comment this. He used to say that, because we have the saying in ISKCON, please accept my obeisances. Please forgive me for my offenses and accept my obeisances. He would flip it around. Prabhu, please forgive me for my obeisances and accept my offenses. To make kind of a sarcastic joke that we're saying this in just kind of a mechanical way. And it becomes like that in our society sometimes, that humility can become something of a show. So it's also something to watch out for. Tirthakar Prabhu, do you want to share anything else? Any other comments?
Yeah, so I was thinking that, as you mentioned also, these examples with the Guru Maharaj, and like it's really not necessary to impress with humility others, right? We are humble because we want to please Guru and Krishna, but there is no need to impress others. And just, I don't know, it's not exactly connected, but it came to my mind when Prabhupada was commenting in the beginning in the USA, and they went to visit some, I think, Indian diplomat or something like that, and he went together with Mukunda and with someone else. I don't remember who else was in the car. And then they got, when they were returning back, they got as a gift some big dates. And then Prabhupada bite in one of those dates, and then gave it to Mukunda, and then Mukunda bite it and gave it back to Prabhupada.
Oh, Krishna.
Because they didn't have the etiquette and anything right at the time. And Prabhupada just looked at him and said, not required.
Who was it? Shama Sundar Prabhu tells a story that he was driving Srila Prabhupada once and he was kind of falling asleep. So he had a bag of nuts on the dash and he started eating them. And then Srila Prabhupada also started eating from the same bag. They were like sharing a prasadam. So that's a good story. Thank you, Prabhuji. Leela's commenting, so there's a difference in how we act in relation to our private bhajan and as preachers. So all of these things, these are arts. You know, can you say, if you talk about art, that the volume should always be loud when you play the bass guitar? Or can you say, you know, the flute should always be in the fifth note? Or can you say that you should always use red color? You can't, none of those things are hard and fast. And so similarly, in the art of living, the art of relationships, it's going to differ. And we need to learn that art and what's a proper way to behave. And sometimes we may act in a kind of a little bit of a humble way, at least externally, just to get along with people, especially with managers or senior persons. And yes, Maharaj, yes, Prabhu, you know, like this and this, and in kind of a sweet way and whatever. But at the same time, too, maybe sometimes we just walk away from it. I remember in 1994, I traveled with Guru Maharaj as his personal servant for a month and a half. When we were in Spain at the farm, the Spanish ambassador to India came to see Guru Maharaj in a Rolls-Royce car with these little like flags on the car and things. And I was serving prasadam to Guru Maharaj at the time. And I'd gone out to get the prasadam from the devotees who cooked. And I saw here's this big person. The devotees are practically falling all over him and doing everything. And then they told me that he wants to meet with your Guru Maharaj. And so I went in and Guru Maharaj had finished prasadam. And Guru Maharaj, this very big person, is here and he wants to meet. Guru Maharaj says, I will take some rest. And if he wants to speak with me afterwards, then he can talk to me then. And he just took a nap for an hour. And the man was gone afterwards. In a similar way, Guru Maharaj sometimes refused to meet some politicians and persons like that in Bhubaneswar, which in ISKCON is a little unthinkable. Srila Prabhupada didn't do like that usually. He would, because he wanted to preach. But I think Guru Maharaj saw that it wasn't necessary in these particular instances. It wasn't going to really accomplish anything more. And better, who cares for these people? So he didn't show any humility with either one of them. It reminded me of that. Okay. Can I go to, is that good? Do you have anything else, Tirthakar? Okay. Mangal Prabhu, do you want to share something? And then Rupa Nuga Prabhu?
Hey, Prabhu, thank you very much for a wonderful katha. Actually, the story from Mahabharata, it reminds me one of the things that actually sometimes we have like ambitions in our maybe preaching and even in our own spiritual lives, and it reminds me exactly this point, that sometimes we want, like in the connection with the imitation, we want to go far away from our capacity, and it reminded me the crow, that he went, on the sea, but he was not capable to maintain the level of the hamsas. And sometimes we can see that devotees, or maybe even us, argue that we follow the acharyas, we follow our teachers, but we do not consider actually our level and our capacity. And then sometimes we go like far away and are not able to maintain it. And actually, sometimes it could be, how to say, it could be very difficult to understand it and go back in the proper time, because sometimes there is nobody to help us. You know, I mean, like sometimes, you know, I think that, okay, we can do this for Krishna, we can, you know, take care of so many people, we can do such and such preaching, but sometimes I think that this story exactly reminds me that, but be you know, be humble, you know, and understand your position, because sometimes we can see how devotees hype each other, you know, you can do it for Prabhupada, do it for Krishna, you know, but often we do not consider our situation and our level and like push ourselves to somewhere. And this story really reminds me this, even in these things we have to be really humble. So thank you very much for this wonderful story.
Yeah, in that story, the crow became proud because he was getting all that opulent food. In the same way, sometimes we become proud when we get some opulent food from sadhu or guru in the form of Krishna Katha, some special katha, and we start thinking, I'm Paki Raj. I'm the king of the crows. I know something special that all these other people don't know. And we might even think we see someone like Jayananda Prabhu, who one time he was with Vatsal Prabhu, who's an old friend of mine, and Vatsal was really hungry, and he told Jayananda, they were working on Rath Yatra carts, and he said, Jayananda, I'm really hungry. Jayananda said, oh, there's always some percent. And he turned around, and there was a can of axle grease. And Jayananda just dipped his hand in, took a handful of axle grease and ate it. This is a toxic poison. He just ate it. I mean, he's a completely bhavuk person. And when he would give class, he couldn't pronounce Sanskrit for anything. Couldn't pronounce the Gayatri mantra properly. Tamal Krishna Maharaj brought him before Prabhupada once, and said, Prabhupada, listen to how he's chanting it. And Prabhupada just laughed and told him to chant Hare Krishna. But Prabhupada loved him. And his presentations weren't so big, but he was someone who was realized. Now, that doesn't mean that if we've gotten some good opportunity to get some opulent food from our guru, that we don't try to taste it. Of course, we should try to taste it, and we should even try to share it. But we shouldn't think that I'm an adhikari for it. Rather, we should think that Garita Achari Rohi Lama Moji, that I'm just a rascal. I don't have anything good, but I'm trying to share this thing as best I can to serve my guru for a particular reason, not because I'm qualified that I have this thing or that I understand this thing. But we should share it, and we should have some discussion with it. And that's why the Bhagavatam says parasparana katanam. That with these katas, there should be some back and forth discussion. It's such an important thing. I just made a resolution to myself recently, a few weeks ago, a week or so ago, that I want to start really pushing really heavy about the importance of Krishna Katha and having a sangha of devotees, and like we're doing here now, having some formal katha and having some back and forth things, because in that kind of assembly, then you become a community, and you iron out mistakes, you iron out misconceptions and things. And if you, on the other hand, if you don't do that, even if you have great music, you have very melodious kirtan and nice deity worship and this and that, you're going to have arguments and misunderstandings. The Krishna Katha is so very, very important. And we should just repeat what we've heard in a humble way and just share with the devotees and then hear what everybody has to say about it. Yeah, and Lila Purushottam has also pointed a nice thing here that we have bhakti anartas like love, puja, and pratishta. That you know, I've been practicing this. I'm initiated. I've been chanting, and now I get some pratishta who's some position. People want to give me some respect and things. We have to be very, very careful. This verse is so beautiful from Bhakti Vinod. The Gadhita Chari Rohi Lama Moji Nakurina Sadhu Sangha. I'm a very nasty person. I've never really done sadhu sangha. Loy sadhu vesh ani upadesh. But here I am dressed like a sadhu, giving instruction to everybody. E bodo maya ranga. This is Maya's big joke. It's a beautiful, beautiful line. I'll post it in our WhatsApp group too. Is that okay, Mangal Prabhu? I'm delighted to have
Yes, thank you very much.
you in the Sangha, Prabhuji. Thank you so much for taking part. We hope to have you association more often. Let's see. How about
I thank you, bro.
How about Rupanuga Bhakti Prabhu and then Dorothea?
Hi Krishna, Prabhu. Yeah, thank you very much, Prabhu, for Katha. I think my answer is, well, my question was almost answered from the Tirthraj Prabhu discussion when you mentioned the story of Maharaj, like when he was in the Spain farm and he denied to meet and whatever things were there. So the question was like this, as we are hearing on this humility topic. So now it's it's a clothes sangha, so maybe I can speak like that. Like, yes, it really melts the heart, and the process and practices really become very, very, very easy to do it with that kind of heart of humility and personally contemplating on that content, how the acharyas have expressed themselves and everywhere. Now, when we come to the practicality, like the kind of situation you mentioned, so in the past few weeks, I saw like it gets evaporated actually. Humility exists for some time when we contemplate on the prayers, when we bring these thoughts again and again. So it exists for some time, and then during the day and other activities when we meet people, it evaporates, and suddenly we get to know when someone reminds us, oh yes, I have to be somewhere else. So like you can help us like some tips or something, or some conscious efforts we should put to keep the mind in that state, or practically, yes, it's pretty difficult to avoid association. Someone can meet you anywhere or something like that. So I hope like uh, how can we do that? This is one thing, Prabhuji. Like what we can do to maintain that humility, the conscious which we got sometimes during the morning, maybe before chanting or after chanting, or maybe Guru Puja. So this is, and how can we continue that spirit for whole day? And other thing is like, is that means was this art of getting saving yourself from getting distracted, or people stole it your humility. So how to deal with this thing practically in day-to-day life? I hope
I don't
Krishna.
understand the later question. The people steal our humility, but by praising us, you mean?
Yeah, praising, or maybe they bring their own conscious mountains of problem things, and you may be sitting in different contemplation that time. Maybe you just got over of your duty worship and maybe worshipping of Guru, and then immediately things flushes into our mind from other outsources, and you also get swayed up quickly. And then we found that we are not no more that same humble person which we were a half an hour ago. So I don't know, does it make sense how it is?
Great points, Prabhuji. Thank you. First of all, with humility, our bhakti becomes genuine. Without humility, it's just mechanical. We're doing something. It's some sukriti, it's bhakti mukhi sukriti maybe, but it's not. And it doesn't matter externally how elevated we are, how learned we are, how wealthy we are, this or that. But what counts is the quality of our crying out. So what can we do to maintain our humility? Well, one thing, let's talk about something very, very basic. another one of Leela Purushottam Prabhu's favorite subject matters, which is Varnashram Dharma. And that is that Varnashram Dharma really is a system of respect. We respect the elders, we respect learned people, we respect managers, we respect women, we respect mothers and parents, we respect everybody in different ways. And that respect that we're offering may be something mechanical, just like yourself, Prabhuji, you come from an Indian family, and the culture is there of respect. You learn to touch your parents' feet. Some senior sadhu, or someone comes and they take you and you touch that person's feet. There's always so much touching the feet. You may be touching the feet of your brother or older sister, this or that. And it may be mechanical. And honestly, living in India for over 30 years, I've seen a lot of practice like that that definitely looks mechanical. I don't think it's entirely from the heart, but there's a benefit to it. In the Chaitanya Siksamrita, Bhaktivinoda Thakur speaks about bhakti. He goes all the way up to Krishna Leela and Astakali Smarana and things. And he speaks about Siddha Pranali and that. But the beginning of the book, he talks about Islam and Christianity. He talks about charity. And one of the things he speaks about is the importance of planting trees. Now, you're going to talk about Siddha Pranali and Ekadas Bhav and all these things, and you're talking about the importance of planting trees and building tanks for people to take bath in and get. And the point being that, for example, between Bhubaneswar and Jagannath Puri up until the recent Navakalavram, the last Navakalavram a few years ago, there were trees either side of the road from Bhubaneswar to Puri, which were hundreds and hundreds of years old. And those trees provided so much shade. Now, because of Navakalavram, they wanted to widen the road and they cut all those trees down. I felt so sad. So those trees were planted by pious persons. And what's the result? Well, they get some piety. You may say, I don't want piety, I want bhakti, but something happens. If one Sudha Bhakta, one Mahatma, one Premi Bhakta is going and he feels some relief from the heat of the sun and sits under that tree, then you're getting some very special credit. And there's tanks along the way for pilgrims to take bath and wells where they can drink some water and things. And those things, they're externally, it's some kind of culture of respect. But for devotees, we do it for a higher purpose. And so we maintain these types of respect to our parents, to older devotees, to sannyasis. You know, some of the sannyasis nowadays, they're much younger than me. Some of them I joined long before they did, and I'm older than they are. But they're a sannyasi. And I should respect that. It's a very, very important thing. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur in Chaitanya Siksamrita, I wrote some article about this years ago for Back to Godhead magazine. It's the only article I ever wrote for them. 8 different levels of respect. And sometimes I speak about that. It takes a while to explain it. But the first is Naramatara Maryada. We have this Maryada, this respect that we give to human beings. But more than that, we give to Raja Maryada, or excuse me, not a Matara Maryada, someone who's a human being, but more than that, Sabha Maryada, someone who's civilized, more than that, to someone who's a king or a leader, et cetera, et cetera. It goes all the way up to Varnashram, to the Varnas of the Brahman, then the ashram of the sannyasi, and then after the last 8th and final level of respect, the highest respect is for bhakti. But we maintain all these other levels of respect. And one example we give is the Vaishnava Brahmins who were in the assembly with Sanatana Goswami. And when the Nawab Hussain Shah came in, who was like the Maha meat eater, Brahmin, Vaishnava, murderer, temple breaker, cow killer, demon, when he entered into the assembly, they all stood up and gave respect to him. And Srila Prabhupada in Chaitanya Charitamrita raises a question, why? Because they saw Krishna's position in him. So back to your question, what can we do to maintain humility? One thing is the safety net. We talk about the safety net of Varnashram Dharma. What is that safety net? It's a safety net for bhakti. That's what it's going to protect me from, not just protect me from taking birth in a lower species or something. But I want to protect my bhakti. And how do I protect my bhakti? It'll by protecting my humility. And then you ask the second question, how to maintain our internal humble vision of ourselves, primarily by association with higher Vaishnavas. Either if we have it physically, then we go and we do that. Sometimes maybe we spend some money and we get a ticket and we go someplace. That's an even greater expression of humility. And then when we're with them, we carry their books. We bow down to them. There's certain type of etiquette again that we observe with them. We don't go up to a senior person and say, Maharaj, I want to give you a hug. we, we bow our head, and if they want to give us a hug, that's great. We accept that, but we don't go and give our embrace to them like we're giving some blessing to them or something. There's a certain kind of etiquette which helps us to maintain that humility. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, in one article, he said that the symptom of a genuine guru is that in spite of unlimited people glorifying him, his internal vision of himself as a servant of his guru and Krishna is never shaken. We think that I prepare for a class and I sit down and give the class, and if 3 people come to me afterwards and say, my God, that was a good class, and I think, yes, just see, I'm almost an incarnation. 3 people said it. So we're influenced so much. And then what to speak of, if I get 100 likes or 50 likes on Facebook, then it definitely must be true. I have this good qualities. I was there's a friend of mine, a senior devotee, actually, Prabhupada, but he's an old friend. And he's really into pushing some of this conspiracy stuff and I don't know what you call it, vaccination thing, the COVID thing and all that. I tell him, look, I never got vaccinated. I'm not for it, but I'm also not against it. I just want to be for bhakti. And he's all in this thing. And then I once or twice as a friend, I said, how is this preaching, to push this thing? And then he comes back and says, yeah, but you saw 20 people liked it. And this other senior devotee, he said something. We become convinced by that. If some other person says, wow, that was really deep, that was really good, then we're convinced with. So the bona fide spiritual master is someone who's not affected by that. So how do we maintain that if we're always put ourselves as much as we can in association with higher Vaishnavas? We may be a big frog in a small pond, so to speak. I'm the biggest frog here. I'm actually quite a small frog, but it's a small pond, so I look like a very big person. And then I start thinking, yes, I like the crow in the story. I start thinking I'm so important. But then when I go and associate with some Rajahangsa swans, then, oh my God. And that's why it's so very important that we have Parasparana Katana, we have Kata, where we share with devotees, and especially if we can with senior Vaishnavas. That's why it's so important that when we have classes, that senior Vaishnavas should come. And I know I'll shamelessly say this. I gave class, the last time I gave class, I think it was at the Bhakti Center in New York. Who was there? Danadar Maharaj came in. Now, Danadar Maharaj is like an old friend. I've given class in front of him a lot. And then Vaisheshika Prabhu came. He's also an old friend. Then Rukmini, Prabhupada's disciple, very senior Mataji, she came in and sat down. Then Radhanath Maharaj came in. And then Rameshwar Prabhu, who initiated me years ago. And I'm giving the class in front of all of them. And it's like, oh my God. And I actually got off the Vyasasana, offered obeisances to everybody and begged forgiveness, and they wanted me to speak, and I did. But why are they coming there? I could say they're coming to hear me because no, they're coming because this is Srila Prabhupada's system. That we should have class and senior person should come, everybody should come, and by everyone coming, it creates a community. And when you have a situation where you have classes, but the senior devotees don't come, then you can't encourage these younger people. Maybe the younger person might make a mistake who needs to be corrected gently, hopefully. You can't correct them, and they don't feel that love. They don't feel that encouragement from that person. It's a really important thing. So the answer to your question, how we can maintain that internal humble vision, is by association with senior devotees, even if we're giving the class in front of them. Is that helpful, Prabhu? Dorothy has had her hand up for a long time. Your arm's probably getting sore. You have any?
Fortunately, it's a virtual arm. Thank you so much, Prabhu. I feel actually humiliated right now because I was drinking in the dirty way before on camera, and then you said, yeah, that actually like clean persons, they do it the other way. But so I feel very embarrassed right now. So it's a good lesson for me. And this prayer by this unknown author that inspired me very much, that Radharani, please change my nature. And this reminded me immediately of a prayer given by Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, in a letter to Upendra in 1968. Yes, you can pray to Krishna. Krishna may be prayed that I am unwilling to become Krishna conscious, so you can force me to become so. You put me under certain circumstances so that I may be forced to accept Krishna consciousness. You can pray like that. It is Krishna's special favor and mercy that he sometimes forces the devotee to surrender fully to him. Hoping you are well, your ever well-wisher, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. So, yeah, that's a prayer that inspires me, because I feel many times that actually I'm just pretending, and yeah, this to say actually to say to the Lord, I'm actually unwilling to become Krishna conscious. That's that takes some courage, I guess. And yeah, so that reminded me of that. And also a straw in the teeth. Another meaning that I heard from His Holiness Radha Govinda Swami Maharaj is that I am an animal. So because animals, they take straw in their teeth, and they yeah, so they one appears in front of an exalted person like an animal. So and what you said about a union from a distance, that this is the meaning of Vipralamba in Priti Sandarbha. Please correct me if I misunderstood this, but I heard it's union from a distance, and it's very interesting to me, because previously I've heard that from several Vaishnavas that actually union is higher than separation, but other Vaishnavas they say that separation is higher than union, or separation includes union, or so. Would you like to comment on that?
Yeah. So you made a few different points. Let me address your last one anyway. Which is higher, union or separation? It's kind of a ridiculous statement in a sense. We can say which is better, the day or the night, but you can't have one without the other. What is the meaning of daytime if there's no nighttime? What is the meaning of nighttime if there's no daytime? So union and separation are two eternal functions which go on. And although Rupa Goswami, he describes it Samriddhiman Sambhog. He describes a level of Sambhog, the highest level of Sambhog is called Samriddhiman. Samriddhiman means fully enriched. But that takes place after Sudura Prabhas. Sudura Prabhas means that type of separation when Krishna leaves Vrindavan. He goes to Mathura, Dwarka, and the gopis don't know if they're ever going to see him again. And then there's union again after that, like Kurukshetra, that's Samriddhiman Sambhog. So Nautam Das Thakur also prays that Radha Krishna Pranamor Yugala Kishore Jivane Marani Gati Arnahi More, that my life and soul is to bring Radha and Krishna together. You don't read any, you don't hear any prayers of our Goswamis or Acharyas saying, I want to separate Radha and Krishna. I want to take them apart because separation is the highest thing. So I want to separate them. No, you never hear that. Our desire, we're in the line, we're aspiring to be Sakhi Manjaris. Our desire is to bring Radha and Krishna together. That's the highest aspiration of service. But the highest expression of ecstasy is experienced by Srimati Radharani and Uddhava Keri near to Nandagaon after Krishna's left Vrindavan and gone to Mathura. That's her highest, that's when Madana comes, Dasa Dasa, the 10 different symptoms of ecstasy. That's when Madanakya Mahabhav comes. There's Sneha Man Pranaya Rag, Anurag Bhav, Ruda Mahabhav, Adi Ruda Mahabhav, Madanakya Mahabhav. The last limit of love is Madanakya Mahabhav. And Srimati Radharani has that. But that Madanakya Mahabhav is experienced when there's union and separation together. And there's external separation, but internal union. This is what Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was experiencing in Puri. So when I hear devotees quarrel about these things, oh, union is better, separation is better, I think they just don't really understand our Gaudiya Vaishnava Siddhanta. You can't have one without the other. You can't have darkness without the sunshine. Darkness doesn't really mean anything. It's just always dark. There's just no contrast. There has to be some contrast there. At the same time, Srila Prabhupada and Acharya Sanatana Goswami, Brihad Bhagavatamrita, and other places describe that separation is the highest. So that's why some people, they quote those things and say separation is the highest. Brihad Bhagavatamrita says so. Prabhupada says so. And that's true in one sense. And then other people will come and they'll say Radha Krishna Pranamor Yugala Kishore, that bringing Radha and Krishna together, that's the highest thing. And they're also correct. So how do we reconcile these two things? My Guru Maharaj said that there's a Prema Dara. There's a river of love through Braj. And then that Prema Dara has two embankments, Sambhog Tata and Vipralamba Tata. The embankment of union and the embankment of separation. And both of them are required. You can't have one without the other. There's no question of how can you have separation unless there's union? You wouldn't know what separation is unless there was some union. And how can there be fully enriched union unless there was separation? So to say that one is better than the other really means someone who just likes to argue and they're seeing things in a political, partisan kind of way, and they don't really understand bhakti. That's my humble take on that anyway. You're also mentioning this prayer, this beautiful prayer that Srila Prabhupada gave to Upendra, was it? Yeah,
Yes.
we were just watching one of Upendra's remembrances of Srila Prabhupada today on YouTube. Wonderful. Upendra was quite amazing. This is the same point Bhaktivinoda Thakur makes in the song